Hey guys, welcome to No House, No Debt, No Problem. This week, Amy is going to do a cooking demonstration.
Well, really more about how to use the space effectively.
Somebody call the Food Network because we just found our next star.
I don't think so. I am going to do a cooking demonstration today. One of our friends and a viewer, Carol, said, what about cooking demonstration? And here's full disclosure. I love to eat, but I don't love to cook. Funny, I love to cook like a big Thanksgiving meal or something like that, but just everyday cooking, no. I like to eat, so I have to cook most of the time. But I wanted to cook one of the dishes, basically that's one of my go-to dishes, and really to show you how I utilize the space. In light of the coronavirus, I thought I would whip up one of my signature dishes. Chef Boyardee. No, really, it was kind of funny, when all of this started happening with the coronavirus. We'll talk more about that later. We wanted to go like everybody else and get some of the things that we thought we would need that might, we'd keep. It was weird for me to see toilet paper out and people walking past cans of Chef Boyardee. I mean, if you really are going and getting stuff that you need when you get food over, non-perishables. And the good thing about getting something like that, like non-perishable stuff, is you can donate it. So I would say the most difficult part for me is I'm trying to use the stove, I'm trying to use the counter space, I'm preparing vegetables. So I'll show you exactly how I go about doing that. One of the things I really like about this dish, and typically I normally will do like quinoa or rice or something like that as a side and some type of vegetable, but for the sake of this demonstration I'm just going to do the main dish. It's really nice when you're in the kitchen because I can put a recipe up here and put it up on there so I can refer back and forth to it. But I've made this a lot. There for a while Jerry and I were doing keto, so this was a dish that I found and I printed about 30 recipes, but it's called creamy Tuscan chicken, and it's really, really good because it creates a sauce that you can use, like I said, with rice or anything like that. I use this and I cover half of the sink because this gives me a good place to cut all my vegetables, gives me a good area to prepare everything while stuff is cooking and still have access to the water in the sink, which sometimes you need. This is one of my favorite pans that I use because it can go in the oven or it can go on top of the stove. But I'm making the creamy Tuscan chicken today, so I've already thawed out the chicken. And so what I like to do when I'm doing this is lay out some wax paper to cover the cutting board, because even though I always use wipes, even before it was popular to do so, having them on hand, you'll always see wipes, disinfecting wipes near me so that I can make sure that I am making sure I avoid having salmonella poisoning or anything for the family. I'm always real paranoid about that. And like I said, what I enjoy about this particular thing is I can cut on it, but it also is great for creating that counter space behind me when I'm not cooking. So that's pretty nice. But all I do is just cut my chicken on this dish into small pieces. I also buy in bulk. Jerry and I had already talked about how we go and try to get groceries, by the month. And what I do is I don't like big thick cuts of meat. So I buy the chicken and then I already pre-slice it in half. I cut them down the middle to make thin cut slices. And then what I do is bag them individually as to what I think that we'll need for a particular dish. I'm gonna set this over on the table so that I can have access to the water, because I always like to make sure I cut my hand, clean my hands. Cut my hands, I don't want to cut my hands. So now that I've got the chicken cut, what I can do is start using the stove behind me. And so I always keep my oils and things behind me. I like to use the extra virgin olive oil when I'm cooking. So I add a little bit in there. And then I'm going to add my pieces of chicken. And then it's supposed to be over medium heat. And then salt, pepper, and oregano is what goes on these as you're cooking them. One thing about the RV is our water heater gets things really, really hot. So I feel like I can really disinfect things really quickly. So I've got that cooking behind me. Gonna take a wipe and wipe this down just in case anything got on that. Jerry, will you grab me a roll of paper towels behind there? Because I'm out of paper towels. So the next thing I'm going to do while that is cooking, I'm going to salt and pepper it here in a minute. And I'm going to cut my cherry tomatoes. Those go in eventually, and I need to cut those in half. I'm going to get those ready. Let me salt, pepper, and oregano. Everything. I use the Himalayan pink salt. I think it tastes better, actually. Thank you. The oregano is really, really good on this particular dish. Second. So again, you know, I have to make wise use of the counter space. So before I start cooking, I try to make sure there's no dirty dishes and stuff up here. Occasionally, I'll move this out of the way if I think it's in the way. So while that's beginning to cook in the olive oil on either side, we'll start slicing these cherry tomatoes. And the thing about it is this is a pretty tasty dish, and it is simple, easy to make. I mean, simply, so simple. I said simply. So simple to make. And here's another thing that I think is great. I've had, and I'm gonna show a, I'll pull it up in a little bit, but I have a client that used to live full-time in their RV. They only came off the road because they needed to. They still plan to head out in about a month. But she has written a book on if you're RV living full-time, and she's taken her experience along with other people that she knows. So I'll give a link to that book. But she gives some really good tips about what to think about if you're going full-time, especially if you're going full-time on the road, whether you're retired or you're trying to earn an extra income. And I'll show a link to that book here in just a little bit. But a lot of really good knowledge there. But she suggested that I get an induction plate. I actually went to get one the other day, especially with the coronavirus and stuff going around. We rely heavily on propane for cooking, so we wanted to have an extra source. If we were ever quarantined and couldn't get out, we wanted to make sure that we had a way to cook. So we went and bought an electric skillet because they didn't actually have an induction plate available. So Jerry actually cooked me. You may have taped yourself the other day doing that, cooking breakfast.
Yeah.
But he
I'll
got
put
out.
in a little bit of footage right here of doing some breakfast outside.
Yeah, and that's really nice. That's one thing we really like about the outdoor kitchen, that he cooked there. And you could easily do this dish on that electric skillet because you're basically doing the same thing that I'm doing right here. Cut your cherry tomatoes in half. The other thing that you're going to need is going to be baby spinach. And I always like to buy the one that's already washed, and that way I can just take it right out of the bag. So while that's cooking and you're slicing everything, let me make sure. It probably needs to be flipped over at this point. Turn the heat down. The thing I really am liking about the electric skillet is it's the same type of pan, which can go in the oven or can go on top of the stove. So that's really nice. I really like that part about it as well. So that's probably all I need of that. I'm gonna let the chicken finish over here. I'm gonna put a little bit more salt and pepper on each side. Now that I flipped it over, I need to add a tad bit oil, I'm not sure on that, and a little bit more oregano on this side. So this dish does call for like heavy whipping cream. So this is something that you're going to want to make sure that you're aware of if you're watching your diet, if you're watching your calories, because that's going to add up. Which is why I like to add something like a rice or a quinoa and some like side of vegetables. Sometimes I'll do the zucchini squash roasted with olive oil in the oven. Again, I have to be careful with the overuse of propane in my oven because you can really go through some propane if you're cooking. So that induction plate, skillet type thing like that saves a lot. To get the chicken pretty much done. What they say to do is do it 8 minutes per side, and sometimes that's not quite enough. I have to be careful. They say over medium heat, but when you're cooking over gas, to me, I noticed that it seems like it gets quicker done on the bottom or something, so I have to be kind of mindful of that.
Quicker done?
Yeah, it gets more quickly done, it feels like, on the bottom of the pan, so I kind of try to watch that. So I tend to cook it a little bit more and hopefully not burn it or get it too dry. And typically, as I said before, what I usually have is I've already started some rice. And so it's a 3-burner stove. So I typically will start some rice and then turn it down real low and let that cook while I'm doing this, because this dish really is fast to make. It's a matter of getting the chicken cooked and the vegetables, and if you pre-do those vegetables, it's even quicker. It's got Parmesan in it, and it's got garlic in it, so it's really, really tasty. It kind of has that kind of an Olive Garden taste. So sometimes I actually do a salad, and I go to Aldi and get that Olive Garden imitation stuff, and it is so good. And a lot of times I'll have, when I do this dish, leftover cherry tomatoes, so you've got those already for the top of it, so that's a good side dish too. Getting the rice with this and then a side salad is also really good.
Amy, how have you had to adjust your cooking style since we've been in the RV for 6 months now?
Do you want me to wait till you flip it or look here?
Either one.
Okay. For me, it's been a matter of really figuring out the use of the counter space. So again, when I was running back and forth to the table a lot. I was putting stuff, and it depends on what I'm cooking. I still have to utilize that sometimes, especially if I'm cooking something where I'm going to need all 3 burners on the stove or something like that. But it's kind of been mindful of this has been very helpful. So I would say, whereas normally I would have started in my kitchen, if I had a few dirty dishes in the sink, I'd be like, well, I'm going to wash them all at the end. No, I'm going to wash them first and get them out of the way so that I have all the space I need. I have to be mindful, again, of the sink, because I end up usually using 1/2 of the sink space for a cutting station or for a prep station. But I also always seem like I need to wash something off, so this is where this has come in really handy. So I think it's more preparation than just thinking about how I'm cooking. And then again, for me, it's also for adjusting my cooking style. I never thought about how long something was going to take in the oven if I did it in the oven. So I do find myself doing more on the stove, you know, or like I said, I think now I'll use the skillet a lot more. Right now, the skillet is living in the outdoor kitchen. But that's something I'll keep in here. And I definitely want to check into an induction plate, because I think that's going to help a lot. So once this gets done enough, I remove the chicken from there. So let me check on that. It should be getting close to being done. Or mostly not pink in the middle. I like doing the little pieces like this because it's easier to get them. So it's a little bit pink. I like them not to be quite as pink. Because I'm paranoid about meats. I really am. Aren't I, Jerry? Mm-hmm. I am. I like my steak well done. See, oh yeah. That's one thing. Oh, that is huge. Yeah. That is something that, because you'll have that come off all the time when you're cooking in the RV. And I forget that a lot, that's going to go off. We also have that overhead thing. You want to turn it on? because that pulls it out as well. But I'm so used to not having to worry about that in a house. And now, which is good. I mean, something's on fire. I'm glad they're letting us know. But it doesn't take very long, like I said, to go off if I forget it. Like that.
I just turned on the Fantastic fan. That's not my opinion, that's the name brand of it.
It's pretty fantastic though.
Yeah, it is.
I mean, it really works. You get these windows open and turn that fan on, it whips through here. So when you have a nice night, it is pretty awesome. Okay, let me double check this one. I do have to be, again, mindful. Yeah, that's good. That's the thickest one. I do have to be mindful of putting stuff places because, do you remember, it was about a week ago, I had made supper and I balanced it on something. I just thought that would be a great idea because I was getting ready to get myself something to drink.
What on something?
I balanced a plate of my food on top of something because I had used all the counter space and it went bam and hit the floor. So I think I ate a PB&J that night. But most of the time I have plenty decent counter space. Okay, so the next thing that you want to do on this particular recipe, I'm trying to make sure I'm doing that right, is you add the butter. Now I'll tell you what, I use real butter. It's supposed to be 2 to 3 tablespoons. Like I said, it's not the most skinny-fied recipe. But I use real butter because I think it's better for you than, I mean, margarine and all that is not good for you at all. And then how much garlic? 3 cloves of garlic. Personally, I love garlic. I don't think you can get enough garlic. So once you do that, you start melting the butter and the garlic in the same pan. I'm going to turn the heat down some on that. Once you do that, you start adding, on the low heat, adding the cherry tomatoes until they start to burst. And that garlic and butter with the cherry tomatoes is so good. So once you start till they start to burst open, and then we're going to add our last little bit would be the spinach and the heavy cream and the Parmesan, which makes the sauce. At which point we add chicken back in and we just let it simmer until it all simmers together, and it makes a great sauce. Supposed to add 3 cups of baby spinach. I just kind of add it until I think it's like I want it.
I'm not going to talk about the color and the texture like they do on the cooking shows.
Just glad I don't burn something. Once that starts to wilt a little bit, then we'll add our heavy whipping cream. Again, this is not the most skinny-fied recipe, but it sure makes a fantastic sauce, especially with that Parmesan in it. It's really good with that chicken. And you can kind of add what you want to it. It's supposed to be like half a cup. I just kind of, as you can tell, I just go with the pan. Because I want it to be enough sauce that everybody can have some, especially when we pair it with rice. I always people like to, sometimes I'll put the rice or the quinoa, whatever I use. I have this one I bought that I'm excited to try. It's a rice and quinoa combination. I just got it today. And then, once you make the rice and the quinoa, you put that on the bottom, you put this on top, it's really good. And pair it with the salad, it's even better. We've done that a couple of times. So once that's done, we're going to add our Parmesan. I don't think you can ever get enough cheese, but again, that's just me. Typically, what does it say? Like I said, I just throw it in there. It's a fourth a cup. I probably, honestly, do about half a cup. But that's what makes it so creamy. I think our dog down here smells where the lid had the water come off. Once that starts going, then I put the chicken back in there. And I mix it up. Get it all in there again. And at that point, I just turn the heat back down. You can see the cheese coming off of it. Turn the heat back down and just let it simmer a while, just to let all of the chicken and all the juices and everything get together. But you can see that, with a little bit of preparation, I still had all the space I needed to cut the vegetables. I have access to wash everything. When I'm through with something like the pans and stuff, it's easy for me to just drop it in here and get it out of the way so that I have more counter space and things like that. And like I said, typically I've already done a little bit of rice on one burner instead of just doing this main dish. Already have your salads and stuff done. Or if I do the slice like zucchini squash or something like that, that'll be in the oven cooking all the time that I'm doing this last dish. Because really, this doesn't take very long at all. It's a matter of getting the chicken done. And then at that point, I'll just evaluate it when I taste it in a little while and just see, do I need to add, any more, to make any more cream, or does it need any more salt and pepper? It's pretty spicy with the salt and pepper, Parmesan, oregano, and all that in it anyway. But it's pretty tasty. I say, with the coronavirus, we were talking in church today about having, faith over fear. It's a very uncertain time. So, we're just praying for protection on our family and on our nation, as most of us did with the National Day of Prayer. And just to be smart and I was telling Jerry today, I was thinking how interesting it is. I've been running back and forth every evening, getting our son to all these different places. And after school, picking him up, coming back. I would make a trip in addition to work. And it's kind of interesting to have to be forced to slow down. I think about growing up in the 80s, I would go to sports practice, come home in the afternoon, and I was home in the afternoon. I might go outside and shoot hoops or play softball or something with my best friend, but life just seemed a lot less hectic. So at least this was forcing us to take a break a little bit, maybe reevaluate what's really important here.